Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to week 8 of the Slow Stitch Along for 2024. This week we're going to do something a little bit different. This is a piecing technique rather than doing, fancy surface stitching. I was inspired by Joni Mitchell, of all people, who won a Grammy at the age of 80 a couple of weeks ago. The song that she sang at the Grammys, that she sang at the Newport Folk Festival, Both Sides Now, was actually first released. I was 1 year old. I was one. But when I was at college in the early 80s, we were kind of newborn flower people. Me and all my female friends used to wear long Indian cotton crinkly skirts, you know, the kind with all the pleats, and to keep the pleats in we would store them in the leg of a pair of tights, and we would go to college with no shoes on in the summer, something that our lovely principal, Mr. Johnson, got very upset about, not because he was cross, but he was worried for our feet. But by the end of the summer our feet were like leather on the soles. But when we used to see him in the corridor, because he would get upset at our bare feet, we would sort of bob down so that our nearly floor-length skirts touched the floor so he couldn't see our bare feet. But anyway, that's got nothing to do with the thing, I'm just wittering on a tangent as usual. So the song Both Sides Now, I'm sure you know it. If you don't, or if you haven't seen Joni's performance, age 80 at the Grammys, sitting quite rightly on a golden throne, do look it up, it's all over the internet. That led me to think about a technique that I've played with here and there, which is called pojagi or pojagi, which is a Korean form of patchwork, and it's used traditionally in many ways, but specifically to make wrapping cloths for gifts. And it has a relation to the flat-felled seam or the French seam, which my grandmother used for turning sheets, you know, when sheets wore out in the middle. I've talked about it before. You cut the sheet up the middle and then you turn the outside edges in, and the outside edges, having been tucked under the mattress, are still sturdy, and then you make a seam up the middle which kind of locks together like this, so that there's no raw edges. So I thought we'd make a little kind of free-form, not too much measuring or fussing, pojagi inspired piece this week, and the joy of it is it's wonderful for curtains and things like that, because I've got a little sample here that I made with wonky scraps of natural dyed threads, because both sides, there you go, see what I did there? Both sides are beautiful. So that's this week's challenge. Before I go to my desk and start, I am going to have to tidy up. You can't see what I can see, but I've been working in a journal for an exhibition that I'll be sharing in the next month or so, and my room is a mess. I will do a little video and just show you before I start, full disclosure, and then we'll get into it, okay? So like I said, it's a real mess in here. I have to tidy my desk a bit. Yeah, I can't really sit there and stitch. And, oops, that was my finger, sorry. And I can't really work on there either because that's also covered in stuff. So I'm going to tidy up and then we'll get into it. Okay, so I've had a tidy up, and I'm now sitting at some clear space on my desk, and so let's get into it. I've got you in quite low because I want to, with this it's the stitching that's really important, so I want you to be able to see. So I shall do my level best to make sure it doesn't go blurry. I can only work within the confines of my camera, but I'll do my best. Anyway, so I'll show you this first of all, up close, up close. Now this is very much inspired by pojagi. I will put a link down below to a video, I think it's about 8 minutes long, of a woman doing proper traditional pojagi with the whip stitch. I do it with running stitch, so that's why I call it pojagi inspired. Pojagi is spelt P-O-J-A-G-I, or sometimes with a B at the beginning, but again I'll put that information down in the description. If you don't know how to get there, because a few people have asked, if you look just next to the title of the video, there's a little word more, and then if you click on more, all the information will appear. Okay, so here's my little pojagi inspired cloth. This was made with some vintage scraps of linen that I natural dyed, and you see it's all random shapes just pieced together willy-nilly, slapdash, made up as I went along. You see the edges aren't even square because I may well add to it at one point. And these are traditionally used as wrapping cloths for gifts, and I've done that myself as well if I've made often knit socks for special friends and family. It's nice if you give a pair of hand-knitted socks, you know, and you wrap it in the cloth. I think traditionally they wrap them corner to corner like this, although I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But anyway, you get the idea, as a wrapping cloth. And the other wonderful use for them that I see used a lot is as a curtain. If you can imagine, you've got your panel and you hang it in a window with the light coming through, the seam lines create almost a stained glass effect. So I'm sure if you have a Google or look on Pinterest for pojagi, you'll see many examples. It's also used for clothing because then you've got the single layer. So anyway, let's get into how I do it, the K3N, no stress, no measuring, bodge it and leg it kind of way. So I've got here some bright colours for me because I want you to be able to see. So this is just a bit of sheet that I've dyed with indigo, and these are some other scraps dyed with various things. In terms of the cloth, traditionally it's made with rami in Korea, which is a fibre spun from a plant from the nettle family. I sometimes use linen, like in the sample I showed you, and here I'm going to use cotton. It doesn't matter as long as you obey certain, not rules, guidelines, let's call them. Obviously the cloth's visible on both sides, so you need something that's... Do you see what I did there with the both sides? I'm going to say both sides many times, and I'll try and get both sides now into it as well. So yeah, so the cloth needs to be, you know, like a solid colour or something like that that's visible on both sides now and forever. Okay, I'll stop. It needs to be fine because you're going to end up with seams with 4 layers in, and it needs to be able to hold a nice crease just for ease of making the seam. So those are your criteria. A solid colour. It could be a print. You could try it with a batik, but they're quite, you know, they can be quite thick. If you had a finer batik, you could try it with that. So something that's pretty on both sides, that's relatively thin, and that holds a nice crease. So let's get into it. Traditional pojagi is done with a whip stitch both sides. I do a running stitch both sides, and that's purely for me because I prefer to do running stitch, and it's all about the process. So I'm just going to start with a scrap of each. This is my Auntie Lily's pillowcase, which is rapidly running out. It's got some of the embroidery on it. Do you see there? So I'm going to use this plain end. I'm going to cut off the bit with the embroidery and save that for something else. When I'm doing this, I do usually cut my fabric rather than tear, because it's going to make a folded up seam. I don't, you know, the fluffy edges are not a feature today, for a change. In terms of size and shape of patches, you saw with that piece I showed you earlier, they're all different size and shapes. The only important thing is that where you're going to join them is, you know, in the region of the same length. So I'm just going to, no, I am going to tear. After saying she's going to cut, then she tears, but I know this cloth tears, you know, sound. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So all I do then is I make a staggered seam. So what I mean by that is I don't match the 2 raw edges like you normally would. I put one cloth with, say, a 1/4 inch proud of the other cloth. See what I mean? I'm going to take my thread. I'm going to use, this is 1 strand of embroidery cotton in brown, in the hope that it shows up and it doesn't look too hideous with the 2 different colours. And then all I do is I take a running stitch seam just all the way along that seam allowance. I'm not bothering with the back stitch at the beginning because probably something else will get attached across there. What I do need to say as well, having watched back my introductory piece, first of all, I didn't have my glasses on. I don't know why. Sorry if that was, you know, oh, where's her glasses gone? I took them off. I don't, you know, it doesn't matter. It was, I don't even know why I'm mentioning it. It was me. It was me without glasses. But the other thing is, I started talking about when I was at college, having mentioned Joni Mitchell, and then I went off on a witter about, you know, Indian cotton skirts and bare feet and the principal not liking it that we ran around with bare feet. And I never made an actual link between that story and Joni Mitchell. Sometimes I lose the thread of what I'm saying. The end of that story was very briefly that at college there was a lovely guy called Sean who had a guitar, and he would often bring his guitar in, and we'd sit around in the student centre and he'd play the guitar and we'd sing, and many of the songs that we sung were Joni songs. There you go, there's the link. My favourite always was Big Yellow Taxi. Right, so I've sewn that seam. So what I'm going to do now is turn it around so that and leave my thread attached, so now the thread's on my right. Hope that didn't go blurry, waving it up in your face. And then I'm going to just, with my fingers, if you want to iron, you know I always say this, if you want to iron, you iron. I'm not gonna. It's a lap project as well, so you know you don't want to be ironing when you're sitting with it on your lap or doing it, you know, in the park or on the beach or whatever. It's another scrappy project that you can carry about with you. So all I do then is I fold the big seam, where I left that bit standing proud of the blue, over the little seam of the orange, and then crease it with my two thumbnails. Oh, I wanted to show you that. Just 1 second. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming back. I wanted to show you this. I've got my thumb on it. It should have a point, but it broke. Probably used it for something that I shouldn't have been using it for. This is a hera or hira marker, and this is used in traditional Korean patchwork, pojagi, to crease, to fold. If you follow the link to the little video I'm going to put below, you'll see the lady there using them. Anyway, just wanted to show you it. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to use my two thumbs. So you fold your big seam over your little seam, and then you fold the whole little sandwich over flat against, in my case, the bit of orange. I'll hold it up and check it's focused. Can you see that? So inside you've got your raw edge of your orange, and then the blue folds over it, and finger or thumb press, and then the whole thing folds over again. So all the raw edges are now encased inside that little sandwich. And if you want to put some pins in there, what do we call these? Everybody shout and pronounce it properly. Applique pins. I can hear you. Apparently people have been going to shops and online sources and they've been sold out. Now I don't want to be big-headed and think it's all because of me, but it is quite strange. Yes, applique pin. So Clover, if you're watching, thank you, Catherine, for the sudden boost in sales. Right, have I got a knot now in that? That'll teach me. That'll teach me to get above myself and think I'm affecting world supply of applique pins. I have got a knot in my thread. My granny would say that's the naughty fairies paying you back. If you were naughty, that's what she would say. Is there a knot there? Oh, now there's a knot there. Well, I'm going to have to cut it off. And I'm going to have to rethread. Excuse me. Oh, that'll learn me, won't it? Apparently also there was a shortage of tea in the UK. There's a particular brand of tea called Yorkshire tea. My lovely friend Kath, hello Kath, told me about it. Because of the rust dyeing, you know. Anyway, I don't think that was me either. So I'm up in your face, I'm trying to get central. So you see now I've got my little seam sandwich, and I'm going to come up from behind with my thread. Can you see that? Yes, you can. And I'm going to go about It's probably not even 1/8 of an inch away from that fold. I'm right, do you see? Do you see, do you see? Maybe a scant 1/8 of an inch, let's call it. Probably it's some kind of millimetre thing. And then all I'm going to do then is just do a running stitch. I'm going through the whole thickness, which is one of the reasons why I said you need thin cloth. All the way along that edge, which I can do in one movement because my cloth is very fine, you know, without having to go through and then come back in 2 movements. Get the applique pins out. Oh, I just learnt a new word in the Facebook group as well, which is scurryfunge. I do believe that's how you pronounce it. Scurryfunge. I'll write it on the screen when I edit. Scurryfunge. That describes what one does when one hears of impending, unexpected visitors coming to your home. And then you go running about, tidying up and cleaning, you know, in that mad way you have, well, if you're like me, unless your house is always immaculate. Hey, we're crafters. How many of us have immaculate houses? Yeah, that mad running about and tidying up that you do, you know, when you throw things into cupboards where they don't belong and sweep all the muck, dust on the floor. I nearly said muck then. There's no muck on my floors, no. You sweep all the dust and dog hair on your floor under a rug or into a corner and put something over it. You know, that's called scurryfunging. Oh no, so-and-so and such have just texted, they'll be here in half an hour, I must scurryfunge. Isn't that great? Use it. Let's all use these words. Okay, so anyway, back to the thing. So there's my seam on that side. Does the brown thread show up well enough? I think it does. I hope you can see that. So on that side I've got 2 sides of running stitch. I'm now standing up in a weird way so I can look at the screen at the same time. And on focus, hocus pocus. There we go. And on that side you've got 1 line of running stitch because your first line that you did is hidden in the seam. See that? So that's the basic principle. And so once you've got that, then you just play with that whole thing. I've got, you know, 2 colours, but you can imagine you could use multiple colours and make it really colourful. I'm going to end that off and I'm going to sew another bit on, because I can't just do that, can I? I need to do a bit more. Just going to do a couple of on-the-spot stitches. So, the one thing I would say is, you know, if it doesn't matter to you, then ignore me. But because on one side you get 2 lines of stitching and on the other side you get 1 line of stitching, if you want that to be consistent throughout your work, make sure you always do your first seam on the same side. So on the side where you've only got 1 line of stitching, that's where you do your first seam. Otherwise, you know, some seams will have 2 and some 1 line of stitching. So that's way too big for my book, so I'm going to have to do some trimming. So I'm going to trim, I'm just going to do it like that. I'm going to cut, because I said cut, so I mustn't be naughty and start tearing. I should have got my big fiskars, but you know they're all the way over there. So now I've got the, maybe I'll cut that as well. Because your seam allowances are, one's bigger and one's smaller, it's very difficult for me, at least, to calculate if I decided I wanted to make a piece a certain size, to calculate how many patches of what size. You know, if you're quilters, you're used to doing that. I want a bed size quilt of 9-inch squares so I can calculate how many squares I need that way and that way. You know that, quilters maths. And then you can factor in your 1/4-inch seam allowances. With this, because one patch has 1/2 inch seam allowance and one has 1/4, my brain explodes if I try. So I just make it up as I go along, and when it's big enough, it's big enough, you know. So I'm sorry, I can give you no guidance on that score. So now I want to put something here. So do I want to put some orange? I could put that little tiny bit of orange, couldn't I? That blue's then a bit big. Or I could put some blue, or I could, if I had another colour, put an entirely different colour. Shall I do the blue? think I'll do the blue. I'm going to trim this so that it's the same length as that. I'm going to turn that around because I see that's slightly... Do you see that's not even a rectangle? It doesn't matter. If you look at traditional proper pojagi, you will see that the patches are often different shapes, not true squares and rectangles. All that matters is the two sides you're going to join are the same length. That's all that matters. So I'll do that again. Make a seam roughly 1/4 inch from the edge. Have I got enough of that? Probably not, so I need to thread a bit more. Excuse me. Oh, put the needle in your mouth. You know that I do that when I'm not filming because I nearly always, every video, go to do it and then tell myself off. And that's only because you're watching, but please don't do it. The horror stories I've heard, yet still, about people swallowing needles. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, right, behave yourself, thread. Do not knot, do not knot. Right, so I'm going to do my seam along there. As before. And you can imagine that, you know, we're all going to end up with little project bags. I know a lot of us now have hexie bags with hexies in for English paper piecing. There's quite a few wonky log cabins on the go, I know. Maybe some of us now will have pojagi bags. But if you've got some scraps of fabric and a needle and thread and a pair of scissors, you're good to go. And I just love those projects that require minimal materials. And you can just sit and there's no planning involved. You just, you know, pick out two scraps, make sure that the lengths are the same size, and stitch them together, and you can just keep adding to it and adding to it until it's big enough, and then you can turn it into something, or you've got it as something to wrap a gift in for a friend, or, you know, it's just another way of using your scraps to make something lovely. Now it's very low key in terms of you know, normally you're used to seeing my work that's stitched all over with lots of different scraps and textures and so on. This is very contrary to that. Right, so I'm to the end there, but sometimes it's nice to have a contrast. Finish that thought. So I'm going to open it up, turn it, put it down, make sure you can see. Just finger press that sewn line so it's, you know, so the two pieces are as far out as they can. See what I'm doing? That movement. And then you encase all that with that longer bit of blue. And finger press it, thumb press it. Get your little handy dandy iron and do it properly. And then fold all that over again. Now here now, because you've got this seam, there's going to be a little lump there, you know, here. That's important to bear in mind, that at no point do you want two of those meeting each other, you know, because I could now make another piece of two patches joined and then join that on. Do you see what I mean? But then I wouldn't want the two seam allowances to meet because that would be super, super thick and bulky, and you don't want that. So I'm going to put pins, applique pins, because I've got some. No, I'm sorry, I should not mock people that can't get them. I'm sure you will get them at one point. I wish I could share mine, but I'm not gonna, because they're my precious. Right, that'll do, because I'm going to, that'll do pig. When I say that'll do pig, I just have to clarify, that comes from the book by Dick King-Smith, and then the film of the same name, Babe the Sheep Pig. I am not calling myself a pig. I had a very concerned person in the comments that thought I was calling myself pig every time I said that'll do pig. Not that I have anything against pigs, by the way. I think pigs are wonderful. I love pigs. Never met a pig I didn't like. And I've met a few. Goats, I like goats as well. Although I've never kept goats. Apparently there's a saying that if you want to learn to swear, keep a goat. Oh, anyway. So I'm just doing the same thing again. I'm just doing my little line of running stitches along. Some of you will love the simplicity of this, and some of you will be going, oh no, that's boring. But you know, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do every week if you don't want to. I'm not going to come to your house and check up on you. Oops, don't pull your seams too tight, Catherine. when and if you go and watch the lady doing proper pojagi with the overcast stitch, she'll talk the whip stitch. You'll hear her talking about your stitching has to be even and consistent, and you know, I think that's why I wasn't into doing it that way. But I like to do running stitch, so I do it my way, and I'm not going to sing about doing it my way. So nearly to the end. Do a back stitch. And trim. And then I'll show you. Oh, I've done it wrong. You know when I was saying about start on the same side every time, I did have it. I had it right the first time, and then I turned it over, didn't I? And that was wrong. So, you know, don't do what I did. Do what I said before I did it. Do you see? I've now got 2 lines of running stitch here and 1 line here. Oh, your brain, Catherine. Or you could, if you were me, not worry about that and just do it. You know. You do you. You do you. And I'll mess it up as usual. Okay, so anyway, I have even been known to decide that that's too big and cut through my stitches and then stitch something across, and then make sure when you're then crossing that seam that you stitch, you know, maybe a couple of back stitches to hold your stitch. I mean, I'm very slapdash in that, and I think if it unravels then I'll mend it. Obviously if I was going to give it away or something, then you'd have to be a bit more careful. But I won't cut there now because, you know, and I do need to get this in my book. I think I'm going to cut this and then put some orange here. So I'm going to cut this quite smallish because it has to fit in my book. Obviously that's a restriction that is imposed upon me by the size of my book. And I see that's not completely straight, and it doesn't really matter, but now I've seen it I might as well trim it. So now I'm going to put an orange bit here, and I need to have it with the seam I just sewed must have the 2 lines of stitching facing up. Let's see if that's right. We'll get there in the end. And if we're not there, it's not the end. No, that's not the saying, is it? Right, this sheet is slightly thicker. Maybe I'll use this. Don't want any more issues. Turn it that way up so I can use that to measure that. I don't know what this is. Actually, now I'm cutting it, it feels like it might have some poly in it, which means I shouldn't be cutting it with my snippy fiskars. That piece, wasn't it? Right, so I've got my 2 lines of stitching facing up, and then I stagger my seam. Let's do it that way around. I stagger my seam. I just think it's easier to have the one piece as the bigger seam, you know, the one without a seam in it, because that's the one you're going to have to fold. That's why I swapped those. There's a method in my madness. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes it's just plain madness. Right, tie a knot. Francis, I did try the way that you showed us in the Facebook group of that twisty around the finger thing. But when I do it, oh, it did work that time. Oh, I can do it. Oh, I tried it and I just kept getting a loopy mess, and now I've done it and it worked. Anyway, thank you, Francis. Apparently I had a light bulb moment. Right, so I'm going to sew this seam now. You see, I'm not measuring my seam allowance or any of that malarkey. All that matters is that I've got enough here to fold over there. That's all I'm bothered about. And that the two bits of cloth end up joined together the right way up. The right way up would be nice. Ow! Well, I don't stab myself. It doesn't happen very often that I stab myself. I have quite a lot of people asking about thimbles in the comments because I don't use one. I just don't get on with them. I like to use the minimum amount of materials possible when I'm stitching, when I'm making. That's just what I like. I don't like gadgets and gizmos and you know. And so even a thimble to me is one more thing that I have to worry about. Plus I just don't like the feel of it on my finger. Plus I don't push with that finger, so it would be there redundant. It's possible that a leather thimble lower down my finger or something like that would help me in some way. I do feel that the eye of my needle is against this part of this finger, but I think probably I've got a callus there from so much stitching. But I think the main reason is that I don't stitch cloths that aren't nice to stitch. You know, I just won't use them if they're too thick or hard to stitch through or whatever. That's so important to me that I just don't use them. You know, or hardly, unless it's really something lovely that I just have to use, and then I'll just be careful not to stab myself. So I don't have to put a lot of force, so I don't need a thimble, is the whole point of all that. Right, so I'm going to turn it, open it up, and now I'm going to fold this seam over that seam. It has got poly in it, I can feel it when I'm trying to press it. You can see it won't press as nicely. It's going to be a little bit tricksy. Oh, it's going to be naughty. I'm going to get the applique pins into... Even I can't say applique normally now. I've heard of people, I've heard from people in the States going around saying applique instead of applique, and their friends looking at them strangely. What was the other word? Oh, pastel. Yes, a lady in the comments said about the pronunciation of the word pastel, which in British English we say pastel when we're talking about a pastel colour or pastels that you draw with. But apparently in the States you say pastel, is that correct? Pastel? Which again, like how you say applique, is much closer to the original French. There must be a reason for that. I'd imagine that there's a reason why those pronunciations differ. That wants to pop out there because it's naughty polycotton. But I'll make sure it's in when I stitch. I have to put, see, I now have to put loads of pins because it's that naughty polycotton. Tricksy. Yeah, pastel. Pastel. Pastel is French for woad as well. You know, the blue dye. Right, so I'm coming up from behind, and I'm not quite as far near to the edge as I should be, but I don't mind. It'll be in the seam allowance, if there will be a seam allowance, which there won't because it's probably already too big for my book. So along I go, my 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And you see this time, because that was the last seam I sewed, and I had 2 lines of running stitch on the top, and then here I am on the top, and now I've got to, so that's what you have to make sure if you want always to have the same side, the side's the same in terms of number of lines of running stitch. How am I struggling to explain such a simple concept? the thing to do is to have your 2 lines of running stitch on the top of your work while working. Don't do 2 stitches at once, Catherine. You just did. But it's, yeah, I mean, I hope you like it, you know, I hope at least some of you like it. If none of you like it, I shall just cry and I shall just go away and never come back. No, I won't do that. Well, yeah, I might if none of you liked it. But I like it because it's nice sometimes. It's like with the English paper piecing. I wouldn't say it's mindless because it's mindful, but it's simple. You know, it's quiet work. You're looking at something quiet. You're not looking at a real textural, scrappy, collagey, you know, piece, which I love. You know, I love that and doing that. And or even, you know, the wonky log cabins, which have so many different cloths in the same, you know, in a small area. This is very simple, especially when I've chosen just 2 colours in principle. But it's simple to do. It's one simple task that you're doing, stitching and folding, 2 tasks. But it's restful for the eyes as well. It's just, you know, I think it's just nice to have all different things that you can do. I do remember when I was teaching my monthly slow stitch in my art centre, it wasn't mine, you know, the art centre that I frequented. I had a lovely woman, they were all lovely, but, you know, one in particular lovely woman, and her husband came to pick her up one week, and he came up to me and he said, "Will you tell her that she has to finish one thing before she starts another?" Because she has so many things on the go. I said, sorry, no, I won't tell her that. It's her hobby, she's having fun, leave her alone. So there. He wasn't, I made him sound really aggressive, he wasn't really, you know, he was a nice man, I think, I hope. Right, so there's see my little piece is growing. He's growing and growing. And I think I am going to, how's the time doing? Oh, I've got time. I think I'm going to trim this and put some blue there. Oh, I shouldn't. I tell you what, I'll use my paper scissors because they're laying there. So I didn't entirely tidy up. The bit you can see is tidy. I'm not going to show you what's going on all around there. I basically went like that. Right, so I want some blue there. I get a bit of blue. I'm going to tear. Sorry I didn't warn you. I think you're all used to tearing by now. I don't think it bothers most people. So I'm just going to trim it. I can cut that with my fiscus because that's nice, well-behaved cotton that won't blunt them. Actually, I think what I will do, do you know what I'll do? If I can find a scrap of cloth to use that again. I think I'll join these 2 together and then join them to there. So I'll sort of anticipate that I'm going to put them in there somewhere with the seam allowance coming there. I'll do that just to show you that. Oops. So I'm just going to trim that to length. See, what you can do if you want pieces to end up square or rectangular or whatever, and that is what I would do, is like here, I'm going to sew those 2 together. I'm not going to trim that yet. I'm going to sew them together first, and then sew them on there, and then trim. And then it'll be, you know, vaguely square. So we'll have the blue on the bottom. Ooh. I don't know why. Sometimes I see myself in videos doing that, you know, bashing at the cloth. I shouldn't do that. Poor cloth. Or, you know, patting it, but patting it a little bit. I won't say aggressively. Firmly, let's say. Am I in the middle of the screen? I think I keep going over there. I do apologise. I hope I'm, you know, I hope you've been able to see. I hope I don't have to go back and video all this again. I would do it, of course, if I had to. It's raining again, in case you're interested how the weather is doing in southwest France. We're not having the February that we had last year. February last year there was not a drop of rain, which was not good either. Right, so I'm to the end. Do my one little back stitch. Turn it. Lay it down. Just, you see, I'm just putting a little bit of, I do like that, just to press that seam open, and then with those two fingers press it down, get that loose thread away, and then fold the big seam over the little seam, and press that down, and then fold over the whole little sandwich. My son, Joey, who you've seen a picture of him when he was 6 with his quilt a few weeks ago when we did the random picking scraps out of a bag challenge, he used to say sandwich. I think a lot of little children do say sandwich instead of sandwich. Right. And I'll just poke that in with my needle because it wants to pop out. Make sure I'm in the middle of your screens. Up I come, and along I go. This way of making a seam, not necessarily with the 2 lines of running stitch, but the principle of, you know, encasing a raw edge. Of course, many of you will know that it's how sheets are or were turned before they invented those monstrous fitted sheets, which, you know, as you put them on the bed, they're great, aren't they? But try and fold one? No, it doesn't happen. But anyway, when we had flat sheets, in the olden times, they would wear out in the middle, and the edges that were tucked under the mattress wouldn't wear out. So my granny and many others used to cut them up the middle, turn the sides in, and then make a seam like this up the middle of the sheet, which is also known as a flat felled seam and also a French seam. I don't know why a French seam specifically. So that then extended the life of the sheet. And in my collection of vintage sheets I do have some, 1 or 2 that have been turned. But the trouble is they're whole sheets. I haven't yet cut them up, otherwise I'd have got them to show you, but it would have been a bit problematic. Right, so there's that piece. So now I need to attach it to this piece, keeping it with my 2 lines of stitching on the top and making sure this, apart from the first one that I did the other way. So now I just want to stitch it to there. I'm going to trim it first, I think, why not? Somewhat straight. And now I am going to have to fold seams, you know. If you do this, at one point you're going to have to do it. No, I'm going to have to do it like that. And I'm going to just trim that a little bit as well, because do you see there it's slightly poking out, just so that the folding's easier in a minute. That'll do, pig. Right, so I need more thread. Oh, I haven't wound it around a lolly stick yet. It's a skein of DMC which recently exploded on me, and usually at that point I wind it around a lolly stick. Lolly apparently is not the same in every country. Lolly in the UK can either be just a, you know, a sweetie, a candy I think you call it, lolly, you know, a hard sweetie on a stick. But it can also be an ice lolly, so a lolly made of ice cream or iced fruit juice or whatever. Both are a lolly. So the lolly sticks I'm referring to are these wooden out of ice lollies. They come out of the chocolate covered ice cream. You know, there's a very famous brand. That is not the famous brand, that is probably a supermarket's own called Gelatelli. The famous brand is Magnum. Let's give them a plug. They're nice, they're very expensive. But anyway, so and I've had a couple of people ask me where I buy my lolly sticks. Well, they came out of lollies is the answer. I do believe you can buy them in packs, but mine have been saved for years. I could try and kid you and say the children ate all the lollies, but you know it would not be the entire truth. But I use them for this. I use them for marking seed trays. You know, I write on them with a pencil when I'm sowing seeds in little trays. You know, basil, whatever the seeds happen to be. Can use them for all kinds of things. I'm sure I could think of some other things. But yes, no, I don't go buying packs of them new, I just save them. Right, so this is going to be, should I pin this seam? No. I won't pin it, I'll pin it when I fold it. Oh no, you see I keep creeping over. Keep creeping over. My thread's really long, my hand has to go off into outer space nearly to pull my thread through. While I'm sewing this super long seam, it's a bit, it makes me a bit uncomfortable again, but I'm going to say it because it's not only for me, it's for all the other lovely creators on YouTube that we all like to watch. You know, like the Roxy sisters and Marion from Marion's World, and I've recently discovered through Roxy Rachel Wendy's journal adventures, started watching Wendy, all those people, and you know, many others, Create and Craft with Christine. For the sake of all of those people and myself, someone recently, a lady called Rosie, hello Rosie, said in the comments very kindly to other subscribers that could you all let the ads run on the beginning of the videos, because apparently it increases our revenue. Now when ads play, if you don't know, when ads play on our channels, we get a little cut of the advertising revenue, us YouTubers. And apparently if the ads are skipped too quickly, we don't get anything for that, because the advertisers only pay when their product or service or whatever it is advertised. So I tried to do some background reading because, you know, librarian trained that I am, I always like to go and do some research. And there's nothing that I could find in YouTube's own words, help centre, you know, place, whether that's the case or not, but that I read on several different blogs, slightly conflicting information, but the general consensus seemed to be that if you skip ads too soon, then YouTube doesn't get paid, so therefore the creator doesn't get paid. Some people said you had to watch at least 30 seconds of the ads. Now I have made the choice not to put ads in the middle of my videos for two reasons. One is that I think it's irritating for you possibly, and two, I don't like to be interrupted when I'm talking. Sorry. But there are obviously ads at the beginning of my videos. So could I ask you all, as a huge favour, not only to me but to all those other people and, you know, any other lovely creators that you watch, Kate at the Homely House, you know, all those people, to not skip the ads straight away. And because I've stopped doing it, I used to be there hovering with my finger, you know, as it counts down, to press skip because I'm desperate to watch what Marion or Kate or Roxy Rachel or Sarah or, you know, whoever is up to. You're there, aren't you? I'm sure many of you do that as well. So now I don't do that. What I do is I press play, set it playing, and then I go and get my knitting or make myself a cup of tea or whatever, and then I come back and, you know, by that time the ads run. I haven't had to sit through it. But YouTube doesn't know that, and the creator gets, you know. So, yeah, I hope some of you will take that on board. Okay, so anyway, I've got to the end of my seam. Turn, lay it down, press. That's a way of supporting us just to finish that thought, you know, without it costing you anything. And it also plays the system a little bit if you don't actually watch the ad. Shh, don't tell. Don't tell anyone I said that, that's a secret. Right, so now, because I've got these 2 seam allowances in this thing I have to fold, it might be a little bit more fiddly to do, but it's doable. I'm sure you can do it. So I'm just going to press it as I go along and pin with the applique pins. Of course, what else would I use? Sorry about that big sniff. But you see why I said it, you have to use thin cloths. You can imagine now when I'm doing this how difficult it would be if they were thick cloths. That's why I think batiks might be a challenge. Not because they're very thick, but they're usually quite a high thread count. So you need nice thin fine cloths. These, with the exception of that naughty bit of poly, are old sheets or, you know, pillowcases or whatever. But also you can, you know, those of you that have new cloths, if you choose very fine cottons. See, you can if you're just patient with it. Just be patient. I hope my head's not coming in. See the top of my head. So I've got major bed head. Actually, this is tomorrow, because yesterday I made the piece to camera when my head was reasonably, you know, I'd been and brushed my hair. Brushed my hair before I faced the world and retwined my twist. This is tomorrow. Well, it's today, but you know what I mean. And I have not to brush my hair. So I thought, well, you're only going to see my hands. So I've got a slight bed head. Right. So now I just have to sew along there. And then I think hopefully that'll fit in my book, otherwise it'll have to stick out at the side or some such. I'm doing for time. Oh, it's a short one this week. It's only 48 minutes. Well, I have got the little bit at the beginning to add on. And I haven't got it in the book yet, so it probably will go over the hour by the time I'm done. Right. Now when you get to these junctions, if you have to stab stitch, then you have to stab stitch, unavoidable. If you need to have a little peep on the back, if it worries you that, you know, your stitches are in a neat line, I would say try not to let it worry you, but you know, I've said before, slow stitching is not about being messy for the sake of it, it's about being aware of the process, aware of how the process makes you feel, and not focusing on the finished article to the point that you don't enjoy the making of it, you know. So if you say, oh, when it's finished it has to look perfect, you're not going to enjoy the making of it. That's too much pressure on yourself. Whereas if you say, I'm really hating doing this because my stitching's all wonky, then maybe you do, you know, it would make you happier to concentrate on making your stitches straighter. I hope that makes sense. It's just being aware of all those things and, you know, like I always say, how it's making you feel. And then finding ways, if it's not giving you 100% joy and happiness and fulfillment, find ways to rectify that. Maybe if you do this project, for example, and you're not happy with it because you're not, you know, your stitches aren't straight or small, or, you know, something about it's making you unhappy, just leave it. You don't have to do pojagi. You know, pojagi inspired. I mustn't keep calling it pojagi because someone in the comments will come after me. But you know, maybe it's just not for you. Maybe then you are more happy with the more organic collage-y type things. You can't be, I don't want to say good at everything, but you can't find everything enjoyable. It's Nobody's going to like everything. Everything's not going to suit everybody. Excuse me, sorry, frog in my throat. Must be nearly 11's time. My second cup of coffee of the day. There we go, up to the end. Just do a back stitch. And I'm actually quite liking the blue and the terracotta, I suppose it is, coloured piece. I've done it upside down again. Oh dear, see, I just wouldn't let that bother me. You see here now I did it, I must have turned it over. I've got 2 lines of running stitch here and 2 lines of running stitch here. That's the first seam I made, can you see? You could say we could if you got it in the middle, Catherine. So I got 2 lines here, 2 lines here, and I got 1 line here, 1 line here, 1 line here. And obviously I turn it over and then it'll be the reverse of that. But if I was making this as an ongoing project, that seriously would not worry me. If it does worry you, do better than I did. Right, let's get the book in. Oops, that'd be clunky. I should really untie that until I finish because every week it clonks on my desk. Right, so there was a scrappy heart. I'm just going to say a quick hello to my grannies. Hello, grannies. Seen such lovely interpretations of that in the Facebook group and on Instagram. And lovely stories of people's friends and families and pets and, you know. Well, you know, it's limit, isn't it? It just fits. It just fits. And I need to stitch it on there. So I'll just use the brown and for consistency's sake. Where's my giant paper clip? Handily clipped to the page. Such a genius idea of that kind person in the comments that gave it to me. I will have to pull it slightly towards me, otherwise you will be seeing the top of my fluffy head. Here we go, here we go. So I'm just going to, I can't really do, what I really would like to do is a tiny running stitch to match those, but I'm worried that it'll perforate the paper so much that it'll tear. So I'm going to do, what I'm going to do is a smaller stitch on the front, I think, and a bigger stitch on the back, and hope for the best. It won't look exactly the same, but I'm getting pernickety. Pernickety. I think in America, do you say persnickety? Put an S in it, don't you? Persnickety. Oops. But yeah, don't forget scurry funge. Take it and use it. Oh, and the word cattywampus, which we've also had some discussion about here in the comments and on Facebook and so on. Apparently it derives, the wampus part derives from old Scottish word which is wampish, which means something that is slippery and elusive and swerving about all over the place, something like that if I'm remembering correctly. Wampish. So when I call cloth shifty, you know, cloth that moves when you try and control it, that particular class of tricksy cloth that is shifty. You could say it was wampish cloth. Right, I'm getting very close to the spine. It's going to be take all my effort and concentration. I'm going to have to stab stitch. Nearly there. Reminded of my children in the car and everybody's children who have ever been taken on a road trip. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Nearly there. Right, that'll do, pig. I'll just finish off. I'm going to have to do my back stitch parallel to the spine, I just can't get it in the other way. Do one more. Do I want a dangle? Let's have a little look what we've got that might match or contrast or otherwise, you know, embellish. There's that little, She's rooting around in her beads again. She'll be hours and hours. And we're sitting here just waiting. My daughter's tooth is still in there. I must put it in the pot with the others. I use that one. In case you don't remember, that appeared earlier, that my daughter's tooth, one of her teeth from when she was a baby, you know, and she put it under her, or not a baby, you know, more babyer than she is now. More babyer? You know what I mean. When she started losing her baby teeth. And she put them under her pillow for the tooth fairy. And then the tooth fairy gave them to me and I've kept them. Most of them I've got in a little special pot somewhere. For some reason one of them is in my bead tin. I have no clue why. And every time I go in there for a bead and see it there, I think I must put it with the others. Right. That's good enough. Where are my scissors now? There they are. So, that is my little cloth of two sides, both sides having some value, which is what I get from the Joni Mitchell song. You know about, starts about clouds, doesn't it, and how you can see beautiful shapes in the clouds, but then with life's experiences you realise that clouds also rain and snow on you, and aren't only about ice cream castles and feathered canyons and so on. So from the song I take, and have always taken, that things have two sides and both sides have value. It's not really about ascribing good and bad to, you know, clouds, for example, or life or love, the other thing she talks about. It's about recognising that both sides have value. So there's my little Joni-inspired, pojagi-inspired fusion of making a two-sided cloth. So there's my one side and there's my other side. And I'm going to write inside here. I'm going to write both sides. Now, punctuation police that I am, it does actually have a comma. Now, if there's no comma in yours, I will be after you. No, I won't. I won't be after you for not putting a comma. Right, so sign it. K3N, kiss. And we are the 19th. Yes, because we were the 12th, so we must be the 19th. I'm writing it the British/European way with the month, with the day, then the month, and the year. I know in the States you do the day and the month the other way around. 2024. Put my dangle back where it belongs. There we go. So that's week 8. Is it week 8? Goodness me. There we go. So I hope you like that. I hope you give it a go. I hope you don't mind that it's quiet. Maybe you like. I hope you like that it's quiet. And next week will be something totally different. I have no clue what yet, but I'll come up with something. So I hope you join me then. And meanwhile, thank you so much for watching. And I look forward to seeing you soon for more cloth tales. Bye bye.